Angela, thank you so much. I'm so excited that we decided to have this conversation, that you agreed to have it with me. You jumped right in so early, and I'm super grateful. Tell me, first of all, why are you having this conversation with me? Why did you jump right in?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Thank you for asking. Well, first of all, I think it's an important conversation for everyone to have right now. My college roommate, Monica, her little sister, when we were in college, was 12. And so she's still 12 in my head, but her name is Dr. Rupika Rissom, and she runs the colonization studies program at Salem University. And I think she's actually heading to Dartmouth. I think they've announced she's heading to Dartmouth. And she introduced me to, I didn't really understand when she told me she was studying colonialization. I was just like, is it like history? Are you studying like the colony, like American history? Like, I didn't understand. I'm like, what is it? It didn't even really make sense to me. And like, I was like, I thought she was a literature major. Like, it's such a weird word. And why does this all have, why is there all this jargon? And I was doing a party. It was a couple of years ago. I actually, interestingly enough, have some pictures from the party. This was the Author Incubator company picnic. And we called it, we had a fiesta theme, and we called it Nacho Average Picnic. And we thought it was really funny. And then I got a call from Rupika, and she's like, you should rethink Nacho Average Picnic. And I'm like, why? It's a pun. We love puns.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's kind of a colonizer pun. I'm like, we can't have fun anymore. Why can't we have fun anymore? Said Karen. I was like, and I was really like, I love Rupsi. She's like my sister. Like, I love her. I respect her. I've read her work. She's been published by everyone, academic journals. But I was like, I just made a pun.
Right.
And she's like, well, I just want you to think about it. If it was I'm culturally Italian, so I'm third generation American, but I'm 93% Italian on the 23andMe tests. And I really like it when people pronounce, non-Italians pronounce ricotta cheese, but in my family, it's ricotta. And she was like, imagine if people were making a ricotta cheese joke. She's like, just, you know how that makes you feel? Just like they don't really get it.
Yeah.
She's like, it's just not your joke to make. She's like, can you make a different joke? Let's come up with a different, you could still be funny.
Yeah.
She's like, let's make a different joke. And I really I got super fragile. I'm like, we spent $200 on backdrops for our cute little photo booth station.
Right.
It's funny. Why can't we be funny? So I think like the colonizer term, I'm not a colonizer. I didn't go to Mexico. I'm pro-Mexico. We hired a Mexican restaurant. We're supporting Mexican businesses. Like, it's so easy to get defensive and to like miss what we're doing here.
Right.
And it's not like, she's like, look, the world's not going to end if you make the theme of your company picnic nacho average company picnic.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal, but it's part of a bigger structure that's under everything.
Right.
And if you can take a minute to think about it, and if you can think about what it would mean to give up $200 whole dollars, when you think about how many Mexicans lost, during the colonization of the native people, the Mayans, what the Mayans lost when they were colonized, language, history, royalty, gold, like what they lost. And I'm like, I'm gonna lose my $200 banner.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about what it might mean to lose your $200 banner, that will change you and your company in ways that will make your company a better company.
Yep. Yeah.
She's like, it's not against you, it's for you. There's an opportunity here for you. And she wasn't being an asshole. And I do think it's nice that I have a friend, it's like a family friend who approached me in such a generous way, which not everybody happens to have that connection, which is why it's so great you're doing these conversations. It's like, we're all doing, I mean, well, I've meant, well, I was like protesting apartheid. I was skipping school and protesting apartheid in 8th grade. I've been like the well-meaning white girl since I was like, whatever, 12 years old. But I fuck up all the time because it's in the water, it's in the air, it's everywhere. I was reading something. What was I reading? I was reading something to my husband yesterday, and it was like, because when slaves came from Africa, and I'm like, who are these slaves in Africa? It's just like the slaves were lined up and someone's like, oh, I'm going to get me some. I'm like, I think
And they didn't come. They didn't come. They weren't
right.
like,
The slaves came from Africa. I
Yeah.
guess we just bought them in Africa. Oh, let me get me some slaves. I'm like, I think we enslaved people, free people in Africa, and we like kidnapped them and took them.
Yeah.
Like, but it was just like a sentence that was on our side. It was someone on our side making a point. I don't even remember what the point was. Oh, it was an astrology thing. It was actually an astrology thing that Marianne Williamson had sent me. But I was just reading it out loud and I was like, oh, now I can't even share this because it's so. But I know the person who wrote it meant well because I've heard the slaves came from Africa.
Yeah.
The sentence just rolled off my tongue. And then I was like, wait, what? This is a dumb sentence. It doesn't even make sense when you think about it. So
I mean, this process of seeing, when you start to see it and you can't unsee what you see, but before it's like, the elephant in the room, but it's invisible until it's visible. And then, but yeah.
Right.
So it was funny. I was having that conversation with my son this morning because I'm asking him to do some art for me on this decolonizing work. So he said, what does that mean? So then I started to describe colonization. He was like, how come I don't know that? And then I had to pause, right? It's like, because the effects of colonization, and yet it hasn't been called that. And I grew up in Jamaica, and so I grew up calling it colonization, but he grew up here. So it wasn't part of what was said. So he was like, I don't know this. And I think this is true and this is a second generation Jamaican, Black, Afro descent, and yet he's saying, I don't know this. So I was like, this is the common thing. I don't know this, but then we're responsible for the knowing and the seeing. So I'm curious about what you've seen as the effect of this process, this inquiry, this seeing that you've been going through on yourself, just as an individual, first of all, and then on your work.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. So it is like, turn off this recording right now, because it is, once you start to see it, it is very self-deconstructing.
Yeah.
And I had somebody say this to me. She's an amazing woman. Her name is Jill Wesley. When I started doing this work in my business, she's like, you're going to quit. And I was like, what do you mean I'm going to quit? I believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like, I'm a queer woman. Like, I'm not going to quit. She's like, you're going to quit. I see where you live. She's like, you're not going to be able to keep this castle. I see how many clients you have. You won't be able to have this many clients. You're going to quit. And I was like, well, that's very judgy. But the thing that she was right about is it deconstructs your identity, and to have the resilience to keep going. I don't know, I'm not a diversity, equity, and inclusion educator in any way. If I were, I would really spend a lot of time focusing on the why, because for me, the thing that's allowed me to keep going is my reason for continuing, like, there's no way to go back, but it has in some ways destroyed everything. So there's that, there's the Indian god of destruction and rebirth, the Lord Shiva, who like dances until the world is destroyed. That's what my life has felt like since I started this work. But the beautiful thing is then something new is reborn.
Comes out. Yeah.
And I see like beautiful sprouts and branches all the time. And I love what's being reborn. And I love what was there before too. Like there's no judgment. When we know better, we do better. Like that whole thing is true. Like I have no judgment on the past, but now that I see what I see, it's like, okay, I don't want to recreate that. So it is very deep work. And a lot of times you get these stupid cryptic answers, you know, like when Jill said to me, oh, you'll quit. I was like, well, that's dumb and cryptic. No, I won't. Like, I don't know what you're saying. Right. Or you'll see in the threads, we'll just do the work, just read. Like, and you're just like, no, just tell me what the fucking answer is.
Yes.
What does do the work mean? What's the answer? Can you just give me an example of a diversity statement and I'll put it up on my website?
Yeah. Yep.
And then people will be like, read the books, do the work. Huh?
Like, what work? What's the work?
What do you mean? It's very elusive.
Yeah.
But the problem is it's different for every person. So there's no, like, we can't give you the manual, and it's very deconstructive and it's very personal to you. Like, so for me, just to give you a sense of some of the things I have found unconsciously, like I was doing my best. I'm not mad at myself. I'm super proud of what I built. But a lot of the programs that I built, a lot of the marketing I had, a lot of the team structures I built, doing my best, listening to coaches I loved. When I looked at them, when I did an honest audit, so if you think about AA, do an honest inventory, when I like read a book and then I would go back and do an honest inventory, it wasn't like, oh, I think I'll change that comma. It was like, oh, fuck, I'm gonna blow that shit up.
Burn the whole thing down. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and then you're like, oh, but I can't blow that whole thing down. There are people in that building.
Yep.
So, okay, people in the building, let me change a few commas while people are in the building. Then let me get people out of the building. And then let me rebuild it. So can I tell a specific story?
Yes, please. Yes.
I think you might be part of this story, but I'm not 100% sure. You'll tell me if any of this sounds familiar. So I think I did a survey, and I don't know if I read in a book to do a survey or I just decided to do a survey, but I did a survey of my clients and I was like, where are you in your decolonization journey? And one of the options was like, I'm reading and studying. One of the options was I'm implementing some ideas. One of the options was I'm super confused and I'd like some help. And the way Facebook works is you can add an option, and somebody, I think it was a guy named Amari Ice, who's one of my clients and friends, and he's worked with me. He added, I've created a business specifically designed for the purpose of helping to decolonize the world. And I was like, well, that's a good fucking answer. Didn't even think of that one.
Right.
And there were a few people, and I think you were one of them, who clicked that. And I was like, at that moment for me was such a learning moment. My brain didn't even think to put that as an answer.
Yeah.
And in that moment that I saw you guys checking that, I was like, well, that's what I'm going to do. I don't know how, because it can't be today.
Right.
But it like built a bridge in my brain. I was like, oh, there's the island I would like to travel to. Mm-hmm. I'm over here. How do I get to that island? Like, I can't do it today because I got clients, I got this, I got that. But I was like, okay, brick by brick. I'm going to do that. So I launched in I guess it was 2 or 3 months ago. It was probably 18 months after that poll went live. I launched a business called the Socially Responsible Coaching Alliance directly because of that poll. Because of, like that moment, I was like, I'm going to get there. I don't know how. I don't know how to be worthy of that. I don't know what that will look like. I've taken classes. I've read books. I've studied. I didn't know what it was, but I was like, oh, that's what you have to do. And so that had to blow up everything. One, just for me to have the time to do it. But two, like for me to be the person who could run, I'm like, what is that business? I don't want to be a DEI consultant. Like, who am I? What is that?
Right.
So it is identity shifting. And I'm not saying if you're listening, you have to blow up everything right now.
It's a very individual journey. It really is.
It's a very individual journey.
So what's one aspect of like the deconstruction for you personally that felt jarring? Like as you talk about identity shifts, like what's something that you were like, yeah, this is me. And then you're like, wait, what? And then
I'm going to tell you this was the hardest moment. This is the worst, darkest, led to 3 months of very deep suicidal ideation and trying Lexapro, which made me even more suicidal. I'm not a fan. And if Lexapro works for you, have at it. It just made me have insomnia, which made me more suicidal. It was not. So, this is what happened to me. I have always proudly proclaimed my, I don't know, fucking wokeness, whatever it is. Well, actually, I tell a funny story. I'm bisexual, and I've always declared my queerness while simultaneously wearing a pin that said I'm straight but not narrow, which one of my girlfriends once complained about. She was like, are you ever going to take that pin off? I was like, oh, yeah, good fucking point. Like, so I don't know. Anyway, whatever any of that is, clearly
internally conflicted.
Right. Yes, internally conflicted. Yes, working on that. That was I think I was 19 the day I got called out on that button. I was like kissing my girlfriend on the Georgetown Harbor, and she's like, this pin, maybe not so much. So anyway, when Philando Castillo was murdered in his car by the police, and if you don't know that story, look it up. It was for me, it was a turning point. It was in 2016, end of 2015. I put on all of my marketing material, Black Lives Matter. That was the moment where I was like, I don't want a single client that doesn't know I'm aligned with the Black Lives Matter movement. And I included it in every webinar, every single thing I did. And I did this partly for myself because I wanted to work with people who had a mission that was aligned, but partly just for my prospects. Like, I want you to know who you're working with. And I got a lot of hate mail. People were like, I was about to give you my money, and then I saw you were aligned with a terrorist organization. I'm like, great, please keep your money. Thank you. It all works for me. Then what happened to me after George Floyd was murdered was the number of my clients who were aligning with the kind of all lives matter message, who, it was actually one of my Black clients said to me, don't you realize you've been giving them cover? And I realized what I had done by putting Black Lives Matter on all of my stuff, which seemed like an ally thing to do, was I had created this safe space for all these very nice, well-meaning white ladies to work with me. And then they could say, I'm not racist. I work with Angela. Look at her website. It says Black Lives Matter. Yeah. And I had like created this nice little, they're not racist bubble. I was like their beard. It was like, I had a lot of gay best friends in high school, and I would be their like prom date. I went to like 10 proms, and like, so they could tell their moms that they were straight, because I would just like
You'd
show
give-
up and
you'd
be the
give work.
girl.
Yeah.
And I had actually created a beautiful business for the moderate white that MLK warns about. When Martin Luther King Jr. talked about how the problem isn't the KKK.
Yeah,
The
we know
problem
to
is,
stay away from them.
yeah. He's like, that's easy. The problem is the moderate white who is more concerned with order and peace than being concerned with justice. And my entire business was a nice, cushy, safe haven for those moderate whites who didn't want anything to be uncomfortable. And they could say, we support people of all colors. And I was like, holy shit, that's what I did. And I remember when she generously told me, she did not have to tell me.
Yeah.
And she generously told me what I did in a very nice way. It was not, there was no Malcolm X in that. Like, she was straight up like, you get what you did, right? I did not get what I did.
Right.
And I took to my bed for 3 months. I was like, how did I do that? And that is fucking white supremacy is so insidious. It's
I remember when it was like, it felt like, because I didn't know the inside of that story, but I remember you were having such a strong, like your grief was palatable because you were like, what is happening here? And I'm like, no, don't worry. Because, there's a part of all of this, I think, that we have to acknowledge that all of this stuff is in the water, and the desire to align with power is insidious as well. And so there's a part of me that's like, yeah, no, don't ruffle the feathers. It's like, so I am there like, yeah, it's fine. It's like, don't lose it. And you're having such an intense grief response. And I thought it was just, it's courageous to be willing to have that response, because some of us don't want to see, because we don't want to feel what we feel when we see. Like when I recently stopped and said, okay, so my ancestors were slaves, like to just kind of take that in and feel that feeling. And so some of this conversation is this, what happens when you let yourself see? Like you're saying, I am, mother hen sort of to people that are against the thing that I'm saying I'm fighting for.
Yeah, I'm reading this book. I like the know your enemy approach. I'm reading this book called Woke Inc., I think is what it's called. And the guy is American, but his I think his parents both grew up in India, and they're of the Brahmin class, which is the top class. And he's talking about how this wonderful woman raised him. And she's just like his mother, but she's from one of the lower classes, like the servant classes. And he's like, I loved her exactly the same. And he's like, and I'm like, yeah, I got you, boo. Yeah. Like, it's just,
yeah,
it feels that way.
Yeah.
Like, I know all my clients would say, like the clients from that business I had built, they'd be like, I love Black people just the same.
Yeah.
If I were, if I saw someone pulled over on the side of the road with a flat tire, I don't care if they're black, green, blue, or purple, I would pull over, and I'm sure they would.
Yeah.
And that's not what we're talking about. Like,
Yeah.
And it's so hard to see, and it seems so accusatory. I'm not mad at them. It's just, I didn't want to create a safe space for that.
Right.
I didn't want to create a safe space for that. And to not create that safe space was like, oh, wow, that's going to require a lot of me. It's very, like, there was a very, like I was super hungry and there was a buffet and everyone's like, would you like the buffet? And I had to be like,
No. No. What happened in the business though? Because you talked about like the structures for your team, for example, and like what were the internal maybe symptoms of the things you began to notice? But like, what were the internal systems within the business then? So it's on the one hand, it's how we treat clients. Like we're hearing a lot right now about decolonizing medicine, and there's a ton of blow up about how we're treating different clients, patients differently, but not as much conversation about the fact that Black doctors are different from, white doctors, like there's
and immigrant doctors.
Not even, right? And the way that you play different, one of my conversations this week was with an Indian person who was talking about the way you play nationalities against each other.
Yes, and nurses, that's a huge thing with nurses.
Because the Indians are the good brown people, or the immigrants, like I fall into that category as the good Black people, or whatever it is. And then the system plays you against. So what were the symptoms within your organization that you began to notice, or within the structure or anything, how work happened?
So this conversation, interestingly for me, has dovetailed into some work with spiral dynamics that I found very helpful. So colonization, I think, works really nicely if you look at values level 3 and values level 4, probably values levels 1 to 4, although we see 3 and 4 in spiral dynamics, which has to do with authoritarianism, hierarchies, domination, and it can work with colors and power, like I'm going to come into India as the white people, and even though we're only 20,000 troops, because we're light skinned, we're going to take over, right? So right. You're going to listen to us because in the hierarchy we're higher up. Right. Within our company, it didn't have to do with skin color, but it definitely had to do with hierarchy. Mm-hmm. So we built, it's what I learned in school, it's what I learned in business. We built a hierarchy built on, frankly, domination.
Right.
These are the people you report to, and they're in charge of you, and you have deliverables. And we obviously weren't whipping people who didn't meet their deliverables, but they would get a report, you'd get written up, or you'd get an oral whatever talking to or something like that. So they're systems, those systems and structures. So what we're doing now is, and we've been going through this journey with support and help on this, but to get to in spiral dynamics, more of what's called a teal organization, or a decentralized organization. So Patagonia is the famous teal organization. So I don't feel like I'm an expert to talk about this, but just in terms of talking about what we've done, is there's no hierarchy anymore. There's no write-up process. We've gone to a 4-day work week. The structures that we have in place are voted on by the team. So for instance, our salaries, the team votes on. It's a much smaller team, and more, it's more, I want to say egalitarian, but I don't think that's the right word, but it's more, we vote on things, maybe democratic. It's more like one person is in charge of one thing 100%. And there's just like, if they need support, they can ask for it. They can get contractors, they can ask for support, but people are more siloed into specific areas instead of like a hierarchical structure. And they just own what they own. There's group reporting. One of the things I track now is talk time. So I'm looking for equal talk time from everyone on the team. A lot more focus on stepping up and stepping back. A lot more focus on, instead of like KPIs, I've taken away all of our KPIs. And it's much more what's working, what isn't, where do you need help? So it's a different structure. There's, we're really stepping into what are the systems that are going to work for us. And we vote on them and talk about them. And I don't know. We're trying to figure it out.
So you're leaning into the power piece. Like so many people have, because of our life experiences, different aspects of the effect of colonization kind of jump out to us. And so the whole power differential and like shared decision making and all this is the piece, shared versus not. Like when my daughter said to me, you know, we the yard, and the gardener said to me, this tree is gonna lose its whatever part, you know, it's gonna fall in the house. And it's like, okay, cut it down. And then she said to me, I live here too.
Yes.
This was after, like, the tree's gone. And she walked out into the yard and she said, I live here too. And all of my stuff just kind of dropped in. I just got
chills.
Right? And I was like, the fact that you don't work, quote unquote, earn, all the things that I had been told are really part of that structure. And you're saying, you know, okay, how do we, it's not going to be clean and smooth, because it's like, there are knee jerks because it's in the bones, as is trauma, it's in the water. But then you're saying, if we can figure out ways to be together, to be collaborative, to not have, you do this because I said, then that's the beginning of breaking some of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things we're working towards, and we're not there yet, but it's definitely a goal for this year, is reincorporating our business with shared ownership. So we're looking at like a new business structure that's more of like a collective.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But like one of the things we voted on this year is, what do we want our profit margin to be? And then what we're doing with our profits this year is we're putting our profits into grants. So we're saying, like, let's take our profits, and I came up with this idea because my part of the equation is vision. So I personally don't like the idea of cherry picking people to give scholarships or discounts to, because it doesn't seem fair to me just because somebody asked for a discount or because I happen to like them, I've never quite figured out how to do that fairly. So we have a separate grant program, and when we give someone a grant, they can use the money for anything. I would love it if they use the money to work with us, but there's no pressure to do that.
Right. So separating the scholarships from okay, I can discount if you are a client, or if you are, or
right. And if somebody asks me for a discount, if somebody's like, I'd love to do this, but I can't afford it. Or if they're like, do you have scholarships or discounts? I say, no, but we do have a grant program. You can apply. And right now we're giving out 8 grants a year, and we've projected that we can do about $250,000 in grants. But our goal is every year to grow that. So that's based on last year's profits. Next year, hopefully we'll have more profits, and we just put all of our profits into a bucket that determines what grants we can give out for the next year. So, so I kind of come up with some of the frameworks, and then we vote on them. So for instance, our salaries are 30% of our revenue. So last year we had a revenue number. So 30% of that revenue number is our salaries. And then I tell everybody, here's how much we have for salaries for next year. Everybody make a proposal of how much of that money do you want. And for this year, maybe you want to get pregnant, so you want to work less. Or for this year, maybe you want to spend 6 months in Laos, and so you want to work less. Or maybe this is the year you really want to like save up for a house, so you want to work more. So everyone gets to propose what they want to do for the year. And like, this is the work I want to do. Here's how much money I want to make. And then everybody presents it and we hash it out. And as long as it comes out to that final number, great. And then we have a different bucket for contractor work.
So then there's also this like elevating contribution and the desire to contribute, because I think people don't show up at work without wanting to contribute, but often we see it as, you know, the obligation. So you're basically saying, hey, what's the contribution you want to make this year? And then we see how does it fit into this overall idea of what we are doing together as a collective.
Yeah.
Because I've been saying to people, you know, inclusion is really removing barriers to contribution, but you have to know what people want to contribute versus what happens, which is like a, as in Jamaican patois, hold on and take away, which is, you know, it's like, I'm going to restrain you and remove from you your contribution. And then here's the thing.
Yeah.
After I've restrained you, then I give you whatever coins I feel is worth, you know, so there's a difference in this whole, I am contributing to this big picture, and this is what I want to bring to the table, which is really freeing. It's liberating.
It's very cool. It's the first time in business I haven't felt alone. So if you're an entrepreneur and you have any sense of loneliness, I can tell you this works. I do not feel alone, and it's amazing.
That's fantastic.
But the grief that has been associated with it, like if I were going to make a list of the people that I thought in the business, like these people will go to the mat with me and they'll be my ride or dies, I got a different list. I did not get those people.
And I think part of that too is the, I guess, scary stuff. You're talking about something, who knows what if this will work, because we also have this, show me, you know, this, the proof that this is sustained, whatever it is, who knows, right? So we're kind of like, no, we're figuring it out, which is the way all things really should have gone. And that doesn't feel safe. That doesn't,
the reason you feel alone, if you feel alone, is because everyone's looking at you to know what's going to happen. Right? It's January. We're going to make $100,000. I know it because I'm the CEO.
Right.
And now, like, I don't know because I never knew, and I don't have to pretend, which is amazing.
Right.
But so many people got mad at me that I'm not willing to pretend anymore.
Right.
Instead, I'm like, hey, it's a collective. We all do our part. This is my part. This is your part. Like, we're all in this together. And some people got mad. Ooh.
Let's know together. But you know what? We weren't really, back to the water, we weren't oriented to kind of like, we all have the power to know. Like that wasn't part of the jam. That was, you know, so like we don't have those tools. So if somebody's listening who's who already agrees, yeah, colonialism was bad and we're not, you know, they agree with all of the right things. And this is now about moving from ideology into hands, hearts, and feet. I usually say heart first because it needs to go there first, and then hands and feet. Like, what's the, there's no script, there's no formula, but what's the maybe wisdom or gift that you would offer to them at this stage of like, yeah, I know you have 25 to 50 people that already depend on you for their rent, and clients that seem satisfied with your work. It's risky to change stuff right now. And yet.
This is what I want to say. This is what, God, I wish somebody would have told me this 2 years ago, is colonialization took hundreds of years, tens of thousands of people, and millions of dollars, pounds of gold. You are not going to turn this ship around alone, and you are not going to do it in a quarter. This is a long, slow process, even just for your business.
Yeah.
And the most important thing you can do is to build your resiliency to a long haul. This is a long haul. And I have a client who wrote a book. Her name is Kathy Obear, and she wrote a book called something like The Long Haul, In It for the Long Haul, which I never thought was that great of a title because I did not get it. I always tell my clients, your title should be the dream come true that your prospect has and not your wish for the reader. Now I know that was her wish for the reader. I was like, maybe I just don't know this client. That's her wish for the reader. This is a long haul. It's a long haul. And you're just going to take baby steps towards it. So where you are today is fine, as long as you keep moving forward. You're going to need support. It's going to be ugly. And the undoing of what colonization has done over hundreds of years is going to be unleashed onto you. A tiny fraction of that pain is going to be unleashed onto you. So you're going to need support around you because you will want to quit. I mean, one of the biggest gifts Jill ever gave me, one of the biggest gifts I ever got was Jill saying to me, you're going to want to quit. Because knowing that, like, I was so mad when she said that to me, but knowing that, I was like, oh, this is what she meant. Oh, this is what she meant. And then it would get worse. And I would be like, oh, this is what she meant. Like, you are going to want to quit. And knowing that is so huge, and keep going. Because what's the alternative?
Right. Like the process, the thing that we're in, the whatever we're calling this moment, is painful to both colonizer and like the colonized. Like we're all in essence, we're all the colonized right now, you know. And so as much as the healing is painful, this thing is toxic and destructive, and all we needed was the pandemic to show how it just is not, it like people are dying, and not just physically, people are dying. It's just we can't keep this. It's not going to work for any of the P's, not people, not profits, not planet. It doesn't work. And
it doesn't work anymore. Yeah. Like, even if like all the white people, the well-meaning and the not well-meaning ones, could get together and agree, we would like to make America great again and go back to the good old days of colonizing. Like, we just all get together, we have a white people meeting, and we're like, let's go back to 1950. Everything was so much better when women were women, there were two genders, and Black people knew their place. We can't. I mean, I don't want to, but even if we all voted on it and we're like, check, let's make America great again. No, it's not like, I am so sorry, Trumpers, like that. It's a no. Like, 2040 is coming. It's a majority minority country. Women are not going to have it. Gay people are not going to have it. I promise you, on behalf of queer folks, we're not going back to, basements and locked doors. Like, it's not happening. So if we're the planet is not going to have it, that, like, the ozone layer is not going back to 1950.
Yeah.
So even if we will agree with you that that's what great was, which it wasn't great for me as a woman, like it wasn't great for you as a Black person, like it wasn't that great. But if 1950 was great for you and that's what you want to go back to, ain't nobody got that time machine. So we have to do this work or we die as a species.
Right. I mean, I argue with people and say it wasn't great for anyone, because I'm just like, who is it, Bell Hooks, who said that acknowledging the patriarchy is about acknowledging the violence to men as they change themselves to become whatever that centered thing was that someone or someone's constructed, and so killing their wholeness. And so yeah, it was violence to me, but it's violence. It's like this is all violence.
I remember this sentence, and I just wonder how this changes you as a person. This sentence: wait till your father comes home. Like, That's what my mom would say. Wait till your father comes home.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, I don't think my dad that constructs a whole human that is not even my father.
Yeah. And for me, that ideology was there, but my father wasn't that person and didn't come home to be that person. So it wasn't even that it was a breaking of the status quo. It was just, here's the ideal and he doesn't fit it. And you are inadequate because it's
too bad that he's a failure because we can't wish for him to come home and beat you.
Yeah. Like I have to be both mother and father. There's a whole, we've strung together so many things and we could keep talking.
I know, but this is the final bit of advice is like, this work is worth doing and you will be glad you did it. I have gone through so much grief, but never in all the grief have I been like, well, let me just go back to what I was doing before. Like that doesn't come up. I'm not like, well, that was so much better. That part doesn't come up. So be a part of the solution. It is work. When people say do the work, do the reading, hire a DEI expert, study, work on yourself, decolonize yourself, all these weird tropes, this weird language, it's easy to want to turn away. Dig in, go deeper. You won't regret it.
I think the work shows itself when we lean in. It just shows up like, this is the work, but not from the outside. You don't know the work from the outside. Angela, thank you so much. Wherever people are watching this, your stuff will be in the show notes or in the comments, or we'll put it in all the places. But I so appreciate your honesty as a person in process.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for watching. Take care.